Well, Amal, it's really nice to see you. How are things going in the Maldives today?
Yes, to start with, the Maldives is renowned for its white sandy beaches. Close to 130 islands have been developed into luxury resorts. So obviously, most of the luxury brands have their presence in the Maldives, from which the government generates most of the income. So you can imagine the impact of the pandemic to the Maldives economy in this scenario. So if I go into details, the real GDP has declined around 30% in 2020, according to the central bank records, underpinned by a significant decline in tourism and related sectors. With rolling out the vaccination programs around the world, the government aims rapid road to recovery and positive outlook in 2021. So the new tax reforms will also contribute to the recovery process, being a main revenue source of the government. So that's why the taxation is exciting at this point in time for the recovery phase of the economy.
Interesting, Amal. So you just talked about the impact of tax on the economy. So the pandemic must have had a huge impact, right? Given the sort of the industry that's in the Maldives. Tell me a little bit about tax, and I don't know, have there been changes in legislation that folks should be thinking about?
Yes, there are a lot.
So what are some of the big topics in tax reform that you end up talking to clients about?
Yes. To start with, in essence, until 2011, Maldives was considered as a tax haven. Maldives did not have a general income tax mechanism to collect tax revenue. The government revenue was totally sourced from import duties, land rent, tax from tourists, and foreign aids. As a result, the government revenue base had to change as the country came under huge economic pressure from the global crisis. So this economic pressure and the growing domestic and international appetite for changes to public financing policies led the government to introduce direct and indirect taxes in the Maldives very rapid manner. That was 2011. Come 2020, the new government was determined to realize its ambitious programs of reforms to improve the state public finance by reducing the expenditure and increasing the revenue. There was a need for developing a larger, more elastic and stable tax base in the country in order to collect more revenue in terms of taxes, which in turn aim to reinvest in infrastructure and social security system of the country. So after long and hard preparation, Maldives introduced new taxes from tax year 2020 onwards with the introduction of new Income Tax Act and regulation, which allows for personal income tax, payee mechanism, wider scope for non-resident withholding tax, wider scope for capital gain taxes, and importantly, transfer pricing regulations as well. So if I go into details, in terms of personal income tax and payee mechanism, taxpayers can deduct remuneration paid to persons associated with its business, such as employees and directors. In the absence of a personal income tax mechanism, the government did not receive any taxes in the hands of the recipient. That was interesting in the past. As a result, there was a revenue leakage for the government. In the ideal situation, the amount deducted should be taxed elsewhere. This asymmetry was addressed through personal income tax and payee mechanism. And in terms of widening the scope of non-resident withholding tax, the government introduced withholding tax for interest paid to non-banking foreign lenders and dividend for non-resident shareholders. So this is a significant decision made in terms of inbound investment opportunities into the Maldives. However, from the tax regulator's perspective, it's a matter of ironing out the tax loss position in terms of revenue leakages. And this is very important. Widening the scope of capital gain taxes, especially in the area of indirect disposal of immovable property situated in the Maldives. So regulator clarified that the profit derived from disposal of shares in a company where more than 50% of the value of which represents directly or indirectly from immovable property situated in the Maldives, that is during past 365 days, is deemed as source in the Maldives, despite the transaction is conducted or concluded outside the Maldives. As a result, the seller shall register and pay taxes in the Maldives. This is a significant clarification in terms of capital gain tax regime. And when it comes to transfer pricing regulations, similar to OECD transfer pricing guidelines, Maldives also introduced the three-tiered approach to transfer pricing documentation, consisting of master file, local file, and country-by-country report. This enables taxpayers to describe their compliance with the arm's length principles for third-party transactions and helps regulator for robust transfer pricing risk assessment. So those are the new changes, key changes, and those are applicable for tax year 2020 onwards.
So applicable for 2020 onwards, that's a lot of change, Amal. That must be keeping you super busy advising clients.
That's true.
So given just those huge changes, what are some of the key messages then you're telling inbound investors from a tax perspective?
Yes. So our key message to the client is changes are unparalleled, given the fact that the Maldives was considered as a tax haven prior to 2011. So companies need to review their shareholding structures, financing structures, operating models, employment contracts against these new requirements, because existing structures may or may not be tax efficient. As KPMG, we are always there to hold their hands throughout this process. So that was our promise, and that is our promise, and that will be our promise to our clients.
Well, that's a very nice note to end our discussion on, right? There's a lot of change, sure, but we're here to help. Well, Amal,
that's right.
Thank you for your time. That was fascinating. I didn't appreciate just how much change the tax system has undergone in the Maldives, with effect from just last year. I'm sure that's keeping you very busy, so I won't keep you any longer. It's nice to see you, and I look forward to seeing you in person at some point in the near future.
Definitely. Thank you for having me. Cheers.